Well, I am adjusting.
And we're live.
Hey.
I wanted to say welcome and thank you everyone from UNLV for being here and speaking to our JAG students. I'm Mr. Wilson from Basic Academy or Basic High School, and welcome. Thank you so much for spending some time with us and speaking to our students.
Hello, my name is Josh, and I just want to say thank you as well for giving me this opportunity, giving me some more insight, especially about UNLV, as it was one of my options of colleges that I wanted to go to. So I appreciate you guys taking the time.
I love it. Well, we will happily give room for introductions, but I think we'll start off maybe situating who we are and how we are all here with you today before classes start for UNLV. So my name is Stina Odegaard. You are very welcome to call me Stina. I use the pronouns she, her, hers. We often share pronouns because someone may look at me and say, oh, I'm going to use she. That's how she identifies. But I may not. And so it's an option for folks to share that. But that's a practice we use. So you may hear some of our students do that. I just kind of wanted to situate that in case that was different for you. So I work at UNLV. I work in our Office of Service, Learning, and Leadership. So that is in student life, which is outside of academic offices. And we do basically what our name says. We do service programs, we do learning programs, we do leadership development, and some scholarship programs. So my role is alternative breaks and service learning. So I help coordinate service in the classroom and alternative break trips, which are, in typical times, about a week or weekend where we travel somewhere, we learn about a social topic, explore social justice, and do service related to it. So in the pandemic, that means that we're doing Zoom-ins, which is a virtual opportunity to still engage in a topic and learn about that through potentially service as well. So that's what we're doing. What our group here today are site leaders for that program. And so we're doing trips over spring break, 2-day experiences. We're going to explore topics like food and housing insecurity, mass incarceration and community development, immigration at the US-Mexico border, and civic engagement beyond elections. So all the participants will learn about that topic, hear from faculty, hear from nonprofits, do some service, reflect, and spend 2 days of spring break doing that online, which is a lot of time right now. I'm going to go ahead and open it up to see if some of our students want to share about themselves. I may call on people knowing that I can't see folks to keep us moving along. And then we'll make the invitation. I know that Josh was awesome and shared his intro. If anyone else wants to introduce after the UNLV students go, we welcome that if you would like to, but there's no pressure. So let's start off, and maybe Vanessa can do your intro. We'll have you all share name, pronouns optional, and what you're studying at UNLV and your year of study there. So like if you're a third year, first year, etc.
A forever year. Hi guys, my name is Vanessa. Sorry, hi everyone. My name is Vanessa. My pronouns are she, hers, and I am a broadcast journalism major that is entering my senior year, or I guess halfway through my senior year, because I forget what time of the year we're in, but halfway through my senior year. And I'm going to pass it off to Kiva.
Hi everyone, my name is Kiva. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a senior, this is my senior year. I'm a criminal justice major with a minor in psychology. And I will pass it over to Haley.
Hi everyone, my name is Haley. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I am a biology major, and I'm minoring in addiction treatment, Chinese, and chemistry. And I will pass it off to Natalie.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Natalie, and I have she, her, hers pronouns. I am majoring in anthropology and French, and I am in my 5th year, in my senior year here at UNLV.
Awesome. Well, that is our team that's here today. Were there any more folks from Basic that wanted to introduce themselves? Again, there's no pressure, but we welcome it if you'd like to.
Oh, well, there's Austin. He says we'll be right back. But we have Austin in the house. He's a senior. He's super tall. He's like almost 7 feet or something like that. I have never met him in person, just virtually. And then Josh in the house. He's at work right now, but he got to go on break to join us today. And then we have Christian, another senior. We're hoping for more, but we'll see if they join late. And at least we're recording, and I'll share all the information with my other students. So thank you so much, you guys, girls, for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We feel seen. All right. Well, we have a couple of questions that Kyle or who did this? Anne submitted some questions from Jobs for Nevada graduates, and I think Mr. Wilson did too. So we're going to work through those, and then there'll be time at the end in case there are questions that you all have that we didn't address. So we're going to jump in with the first one and see if someone can talk about what is a typical day in the life of a UNLV student.
Yeah, so I'll kind of start it off here. So I'm going to try to touch base on things pre-COVID in hopes that we get back there one day. So typical student depends on if you go part-time or full-time. I've done both. So part-time, I've also attended CSN and then transferred over to UNLV. So I will say that depending on where you decide to go, if you go to like a community school, there tends to be a little bit more flexibility in scheduling. For example, I was able to take like 6 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock at night classes when I was at CSN, whereas UNLV, they're a little bit more, there's a little bit less options as at the university level, as at least at UNLV. But typical day, classes are usually 2 times a week, so Monday, Wednesdays, or Tuesday, Thursdays. Or if you're really ambitious, you could take a 3-hour class on Fridays. So your day would be going into your classes. They're on campus. There's a student union, which has like your learning areas. It has also your food court area. There's also computer labs. The library is ginormous in itself. You could get lost in there. There's like 5 floors that to this day I still haven't made it through all of that. There's tours available if and when you do start at UNLV. I highly recommend taking one of those because, like I said, as a transfer student, I was a little lost. But buildings are pretty easy to find. They're all on your schedule. So all the buildings correlate to your schedule as far as like what numbers you're looking for. Classrooms in itself, in person, sometimes you get those huge lecture halls, depending on how many people in your class. And sometimes you end up with a little bit more of an intimate setting. Again, comparing CSN to UNLV, at CSN, it was fairly intimate most of the time. I think the most I ever had was like 15, 20 people in my class. Whereas UNLV, I've been in classes as big as like 100. So aside from that, most of the classes are usually in the morning. There's as early as 8 a.m. I've seen classes all the way to like 4 or 5. So depending on how ambitious you are, you could take a full class load, which for some people is 4. That's considered full time. Some people go all the way up to 5 or 6. And then on the weekends, I believe campus is closed. I don't know 100%, but I don't see a lot of people who hang around on Saturdays and Sundays. There is a big courtyard area that people usually hang out in. You study. They play music. You see a ton of skateboards and a ton of which I used to think was like, oh, I don't need a skateboard. And I was like, man, this campus is big. But yeah, there's a lot of outdoor areas to hang out in if that's more of your speed. And I don't feel like I'm leaving anything else out other than, yeah. So I'm going to actually have Natalie tag team. She's going to talk you guys through like a little bit of the COVID experience, the virtual learning.
Yeah. Hey, y'all. So during that transition into that online learning aspect that we have, classes have shifted into either, I'm not sure to what extent you all experienced this in high school, but having that synchronous and asynchronous learning. So synchronous classes being where you're actively in class, kind of like some of you are here with us now. We're talking, we're engaging in discussion right now, learning the material, versus asynchronous, which is when you log on to your class online and learn it on your own, whether that's at 8 in the morning or potentially at midnight, whatever suits your plate, your palette of what the best time of day for you to learn that material. There's also the ability to create your schedule in here at UNLV. So that's why a typical day looks very different depending on who you are and what your needs are and what your personal life looks like, because you can create your schedule. You can have strictly, as Vanessa mentioned, afternoon classes or strictly morning classes. But also keeping in mind that when you do decide to, if and when you join UNLV, when creating that schedule, being mindful of, yes, you might have 15-minute breaks between each course. Is that enough time in person to get from point A to point B because it is a large campus? Or online, is that enough time for you to have enough break between each of them, between each class? Or potentially if you're getting off of work, is that enough time for you to drive back home to log on to class if it's a synchronous one? Looking at a typical day now, virtually, clubs are still active on campus. We have virtual clubs that you can still be engaged with, so you can connect with other students as well and start building those cool relationships with faculty members and as well your peers, and build your social network. And yeah, that's what it's like during COVID.
Sorry, something else I wanted to add, which is muy importante. They do have the rec center, the gym on campus, which even now with virtual learning is operating under like social distance. And so they have their own like classes and stuff through that, so if you wanted to do like yoga in the morning or you want to do like a weightlifting or cycle class, they have those options available. So wanted to point that out.
That is a good point, because anyone who's enrolled, I think at over 6 units, pays a fee to access the Rec and Wellness Center. So that's any of the workout equipment, the track, any of the classes they offer, the massage chair area. So a lot of students don't know that those are part of what they pay for when they're paying student fees alongside tuition. So good point. I did mention in the chat that you are welcome to drop questions there in case we are sharing a lot and you don't get a chance and you don't want to forget your question. So please feel free to drop that in there if you would like. The next thing we were going to talk a little bit about is what degrees and programs are offered at UNLV and how to choose which one that you want to do. So I'll start off. There are so many programs at UNLV. So I'm going to give you kind of a laundry list, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how to learn more about them to see if that's something that you're interested in, because it's really great that there are so many, but it's also a little overwhelming potentially to figure out which one is your niche. We often, this may or may not be new terminology to you. It wasn't really used in my high school experience, but we'll talk about hard sciences and soft sciences. So your social sciences. Hard sciences are like physical sciences, chemistry, biology. We're not going to divide these into those 2 boxes because there are more than that, but we have architecture where you can do building or landscape design and interior design. We have a lot of different business programs. So this can be accounting, business administration, communication, construction management, economics, entrepreneurship if you want to run your own business versus working for someone else's, finance, hospitality. That's a big school in Vegas. Marketing, real estate, technology, commercialization. So that's all kind of that business world. There's a lot to do with different computer science, information technology, management information systems, unmanned aircraft systems, working with drones. We certainly have a big education program where you could specialize in early childhood ed, secondary ed, special education, elementary. So lots of different ways to think about education and how you might engage with learners at different ages. Engineering. One of our site leaders works in entertainment and engineering. So like those folks go on to design the sets for Cirque du Soleil. But there's also electrical engineering, civil engineering, designing roads and watersheds and all sorts of things. We also have ethnic studies, which is a really important course of studies, looking at how different groups of people's histories have been in our world and our country. And so you can study African American studies, Indigenous studies, Asian American, Latinx, and Latin American. Important studies that aren't always included in our dominant narratives in standard curriculum, unfortunately. We have fine arts, so you can do dance, theater, music, film. Hard sciences, which is biochemistry, biology, chemistry, earth and environmental science, geology. Health studies, so this is anything from athletic training, kinesiology, nursing, nutrition, radiography, doing like medical technology. We're about 3/4 of the way through, so hang in there. We have an honors college if the high academic engagement is what you're looking for. If not, there are lots of other ones we'll keep going on too. So we have your humanities, your writing, your English, your philosophy, languages. We had Haley mentioned she's studying Chinese. You can also study French, German, Italian, Japanese, Spanish, and certainly there's math and physics. Public affairs, so things like public health, social science, social work, urban studies, and then our social sciences, so addictions, anthropology, which is I think Natalie's housed with some of that, human services, therapy, psychology, social science, sociology. So lots of different things under that umbrella. And that is where we'll stop. So that's a huge laundry list of things. So how do you know if that's something you're interested in? And how do you choose what you're ultimately going to major in? So I will see if Vanessa wants to talk instead of me, and then we'll bounce around some ideas there.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about this topic because I am what we call a non-traditional student. So I took a break. I graduated high school in 2007, and then I did a bunch of other things and then went back to school. And in that, I learned that like I changed my mind a million times. So let me just say it's okay to change your mind. It's okay. You're figuring out something huge, which is like, what am I going to do? And you might be in one class and be like, this, I love this, and go that route and be like, you know what, this is what I thought. So a couple of things I always like to tell young people that are going into school is if you can volunteer in it, do it. When I was 17, I wanted to be an interior designer. And so I volunteered at an interior design studio and then realized that that was not anywhere near what I thought it was. It was not Extreme Makeover Home Edition. So I quit that. But I would say volunteer where you can. And as far as like on-campus resources, the first semester and those first couple of years, you're getting a lot of your prereqs out of the way. And although you think, oh, well, 2 years is a long time, I have a long time to figure it out, I would say use all that time. So in that time, there's clubs. Join a club, join a film club. If you're like, I don't know, maybe, or join a dance club or join whatever you can to not only experience it, but to network with those individuals and ask them. The best people to talk to are the people in the industry. So if you're like, you know, I've always had an interest in dance, talk to a dancer or talk to a dance instructor or whatever job you feel like I'm interested, but I don't know, before you put all your time, energy, money, and resources into that particular field. The other resource to look into is we have a career services department. And oftentimes you don't hear about this until you're like ready to graduate and they're like, oh, by the way, we can help you get a job, which is amazing and absolutely should be utilized. But I would say use it as soon as you get there. Go meet with a career services representative and tell them your dreams and aspirations. Go big. Tell them whatever it is you want to do. Like, hey, I want to run my own business. I want to be a shark on Shark Tank. Tell them whatever it is. And these individuals are so connected, whether it's through clubs, whether it's through job platforms, resources, whatever it is. A little quick example, when I started and I told them I wanted to be in journalism and I wanted to work on camera and radio, the first thing they did was introduce me to this network that I would have never have known of otherwise. And in that network, I have been able to do little things like work red carpets and go behind the scenes and do stuff that it's not necessarily offered through the school, but it's through this department that I found about from school. So I would connect with career services. And then my last bit of advice as far as like, well, how do I narrow down what it is I really like? It's kind of a weird way of thinking about it, but what's helped me is ask yourself, what's the thing you would get up and do for free? What's the thing that you would get up and not only do for free, but let's just say transportation didn't exist and you had to walk everywhere. Where would you walk a mile to without getting paid? And if you're like, well, I'd only walk a mile to go play basketball, look into that. What can you do in that field? You know, or I would only walk a mile to like teach young people, whatever that is. So those are kind of my like big takeaways from all of the many hats that I've worn. I've learned that it's better to just hands-on experience, get it out of the way, see if it's a good fit for you, and ask a lot of questions. Never be afraid to ask questions and ask the ugly questions. What's it like? What do you love about your job? What do you hate about your job? What's advice you wish that you had when you first started? Stuff like that. So those are my big advices. If anyone else has anything else to add in, please feel free.
That's excellent.
I know the other things I was going to suggest, you do have those core classes that you're taking. But if you're kind of like, well, I don't know if I want to take a class in radiology or kinesiology, there are directories online of all of those majors that I listed off. And so go into them and read the class descriptions. And if you're like, oh, that's interesting, that's a good sign that you might want to take a class and see if that's something you're interested to. Now, the reality is that UNLV is not cheap. And I think it's really important to be upfront about that, it's a pretty significant financial commitment. There are certainly scholarships and programs like that you can tap into. But the other thing that we talk about, I was a community college student and transferred into a university to finish my degree. That's a super valid path, and you get a lot out of your education no matter where you start and where you finish. And then the other thing to think about is if you're like, I don't want to even spend money on a community college class, they have what are called MOOCs, if you haven't heard of them. It's a massive open online course, and many of them are free. And so you could take a class in linguistics and see if that's your thing before you're spending the money to do it. It's still spending your time, but it's a good way to, again, kind of explore a topic you might know nothing about. All right.
The other thing I'll add in real quick, just to play off what Stina said in regards to also utilizing those resources, when you meet with a counselor and to pick out your courses, it's not as cut and dry as you think it is. Like, so for example, when I had to take English 102, I was like, oh man, I really don't want to like sit and listen to like Shakespeare all day. That's not my jive. But I found out that there was like a film studies class where you watched films from the 50s, and that fell under English 102. So I took a class where I watched movies from the 50s and I got credit for it. And that was only because I told the counselor what my strengths were and what I wanted to do. So utilize those counselors because they know the directory in and out. That's their job. So it kind of helps, like what Tina's saying, instead of doing your own research on the website, do that too, but also go to them and say, hey, like this is kind of where I'm interested. Can you help me out? Narrow down what I can take.
Awesome. We have 4 more questions that we're planning on addressing. But Mr. Wilson, if there's anything that if anytime you want to pop in and hit pause, let me know. Otherwise, we'll keep going.
I will let you know. Nope. So far, so good. This is great.
All right. Awesome. Well, then I think now we're going to have Kiva share a little bit about what classrooms, like that classroom environment, and what faculty professors are like. So Kiva.
Yeah. So in summary, from my experience, not all, but most professors on our campus are very encouraging and very welcoming. They all want you to come into their office hours and ask them questions. They're there for you. They're a resource for you. And most of the time, we don't utilize them as much as we should, which is why they're so adamant on getting us to come to their office hours and get those questions answered if we have any. But yeah. In summary, they are very encouraging and it's very helpful. It's a good resource to have, especially on a campus like ours, where the staff is so encouraging and so helpful.
And that's awesome, Kiva. We have students, again, as they were sharing, from a lot of different disciplines. So I think when you have lab work, you're going to have some classes that are smaller, maybe 20 people. I know actually I taught a leadership class and we had usually 10 to 12 people, very intimate. But you will have some classes that are big lecture halls where they're just lecturing at you, but then you might have a smaller discussion group with a graduate teaching assistant afterwards. So the classes can be very different from each other depending on your field of study, what kind of class it is, if it's entry, introductory level, or like an advanced coursework that, for your major. Those tend to be smaller groups. And some faculty do a lot of discussion and engagement, and some are like, here's your lecture, ready, go. Did anyone else from UNLV want to add anything in? It's all right if you don't.
I would just say don't be intimidated. I think that a lot of the times we forget that professors, not that they're that different from high school teachers in the sense of they all want to see their students succeed, but professors treat you as you're an adult. And so they understand, if, especially now with COVID, I would say that, don't take advantage of it, but it's easier to say, hey, I have this stuff going on. I'm working 2 jobs. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Is there any way you could help me with this I'm not understanding this one concept. And they're a lot more understanding, and they're a lot more like, hey, we get it. You're an adult, you're living your adult life, and you're also trying to educate yourself, and they understand that it's hard. So I would say encourage you to always be transparent with them, and always tell them what's going on and not be intimidated.
I think that's a good point. Kiva was talking about office hours, and I think a lot of students, I didn't see my faculty until my junior year, my third year of school. And I feel like that really would have changed how I did things. And then there were times too where it was my junior year and I was in a class with people, and one of the students asked, hey, can we push this deadline back? Because I'm not really sure what's going on. And I was shocked by that, because I was like, what? You just, like, the faculty decides and you just follow it. And it was like, no, the faculty do want you to do good work and to feel like you're learning. And so being able to ask those questions and say, hey, can I have more time, is super helpful. Good points, everyone. All right. So we can jump into the next question, which is around living on campus. What's it like to live on campus, and how expensive is it? So I think Haley's going to give us some info on, or perspective on, her experience.
So I lived on campus for my first 2 years of college, and then I've lived at home since, for the last 3. Living on campus can be really expensive. There are some scholarships that pay for it, but you have to be really careful when you're planning that. It's also nice because you don't have to pay for like gas to drive to campus, and it includes like all your food and stuff. So that was nice. Living on campus is a lot of fun. I'm a little bit on the shyer side, so it kind of pushed me out to get to know the people on my floor, and I had a roommate, and I feel like it made me get more involved with things because it was so easy. It was like, oh, I just have to walk like across the campus or whatever to go to an event, rather than just like having to drive and like, I don't know, find the time and energy to do that, I guess. There are definitely a lot of pros and cons to living on campus versus at home, but yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I used to work in residence life, and so I lived on campus as a student and then as a staff member. So certainly I'm glad Haley mentioned the financial component. It is quite expensive, more so than you'll pay. The food is expensive. The board room is expensive. But you get some benefits from it. And so it's a cost trade-off, right? So you will get more financial aid to help pay for that, but it can be loans. It can be, so I always say, like, it can be great. But it can also be the sort of thing where you decide, like, that's fairly expensive and maybe not the thing for me right now. So just learn info before you sign any contracts and talk to their staff about those scholarships Haley was mentioning. Awesome. All right, so I think Kiva and Haley are going to talk a little bit, and maybe Vanessa will jump in. We'll kind of see where everyone lands, about what resources are on campus to help students become successful.
So I can talk about 3. The Academic Success Center on campus has a whole bunch of programs within it. Some of the programs are supplemental instruction and tutoring, and those are both jobs you can get if you like do well in the courses. You can become a supplemental instruction leader, and supplemental instruction leaders go to a class with the students and then plan like a group study session for review. So that can help you like learn the material better and form study groups. And then tutoring is just drop-in. So there's a tutoring center. Right now it's through Zoom, so you'll just like use the Zoom link. But you can just drop in and ask another student who has already taken the class and did well in it different questions about the class, and kind of like learn the material better. Those also teach different like study techniques. And another popular resource is the Office of Undergraduate Research. So this is an office on campus that you can connect with, and they'll help introduce you to different research opportunities if that's something you want to participate in on campus. And then you can get like research grants to help pay for your tuition, and it's also good like job experience. Tutoring is included, so is supplemental instruction. So both of those resources are free. You pay it when you like pay your regular tuition, and yeah, they're really great and easy. There's a couple other ones. So there's like academic coaches that can help you learn how to study and stuff, but most of the resources on campus are all free.
Awesome. I was a little curious. I was just looking at the tuition for UNLV. So for the in-state, is that like per year? Is like around 8,000? Is that per year or per semester?
It depends on what you're looking at. Normally they specify right next to it.
Yeah, it just says in-state tuition like around 8,000. Out of state's like 23,000.
That would
But,
be closer to the year.
The whole year. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's just fall and spring semester. If you do summer school, that's an extra fee.
Okay. And yeah, and then I was seeing too for the housing and the residence halls cost, it's depending on which complex, like almost 3,000 per semester. So that is expensive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, like, if you do pay that, does that include the food like to eat on campus? Like I heard you get like a food voucher or something like that.
So if you live on campus, you're required to choose a meal plan. There are a couple, I think there are like 4 or 5 meal plans that you can choose from, and they're all different costs.
So it's on top of the room fee that you were seeing there of $3,000 a semester. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
Pretty steep.
So basically, like, how much you want to eat is the different meal plans.
They tailor it around.
You want 3 meals a day or just 2? Okay.
I think it's typically you can have dining dollars outside of the residence hall meals. So some people really only want 2 meals a day. They're like, I'm going to sleep through breakfast and I'm going to do. But once you get into the dining commons, it's all you care to eat, and you can't take
cool.
some food out. So yeah, they're not like weighing the amount and being like,
serving size.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. That's good.
Yeah, but it is expensive. It's some of the things that's constantly a little frustrating. I did see a question about books as well, so we can get to that at some point. We will not ignore it. We do have some more resources to go over if we can keep on that thread, and then we'll make sure to talk about books at the end, if that's all right. Were there any other questions before we go on? No? Okay. Well, that chat feature is being great, so awesome. Kiva, did you want to jump in and offer something too? I know you.
Yeah, so following from that list that we've got on the topic of academic advisors, I tend to go to my academic advisor every semester to help me plan out my schedule and which classes I'm going to take, because it's very important to make sure that you're staying on track with your courses. And your academic advisors are there to guide you with that. The Academic Success Center can also do that as well, though. Yeah. Oh, I also wanted to talk about the Math Bridge program, because when I first came into UNLV, I was placed into the Math Bridge program to help me with my math classes. And so they basically gave me the skills to help me with the introductory math courses. So that's your Math 95 and 96. So that when I did take my Math 124 course, which was the requirement for my degree, I was able to pass it with an A. So that was really good because I'm terrible at math, but that course really helped me. So, yeah.
And that was over the summer, right, Kiva?
Yeah, that was the first summer before I actually started my degree. So before I came in for fall semester, I was placed into that for the summer.
And I think MathBridge is normally free, as long as you attend the courses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really helpful. Mm-hmm. And then on campus,
you said as long as you end up attending your courses the next semester? Is that what you said?
You have to. So MathBridge is like a summer program. I'm a tutor, and so they hire us to help with it. But as long as the student attends a certain percentage of the summer courses, then it's free for them. It's just an incentive to make sure that people go and use the resource and not just drop out.
Okay.
I completely forgot about that because it was so long ago. Thank you, Haley. But yeah.
Well, some of the other things I can run through really quickly, because again, they're not things I would have thought to ask about, but they do exist on campus. So if you're what we call a first generation student, you're the first in your family to go to and complete school. A lot of students, again, you can't necessarily go ask a parent or a loved one, hey, what should I be asking about? And so we do have a first generation club on campus, and many campuses are having that. CSN, I think, has one too. And it's just a way to, again, have they'll do topics where they're like, hey, you may not know about this, and your family may not know to talk to you about this. And so they'll have resources, lectures, handouts, workshops, etc. We also have TRIO, which is a federal program that then has offices on campus. So they do student support services, which offers additional advising. They have programs for folks who identify as ANAPISI, which is Asian American, Indigenous, and Southeast Asian students, and then Latinx identified students. So they have a lot of real specialized resources for students that you can take advantage of as well. We also have a writing center on campus. So if you're like, I'm writing this paper for the history department and I don't know how to do this certain citation style, I only learned MLA in high school, they can help you be like, all right, let's talk about Chicago style. Let's look at the content of your paper. With any campus, they have these typically. You do have to go more than just the night before usually. They'll want a little bit of time, so you have to plan ahead, but it's really good to know about that and to take advantage of it. Kiva, do you want to mention CARE, the CARE Center? If not, I can.
Yeah, so I'm also a volunteer with the Care Advocates on campus. We're essentially an advocacy group on campus based around mental health and counseling and general wellness and betterment. So it's another program on campus for students, and it's also completely free of charge. Just like I was going to say that CAPS is also completely free of charge, but they are only up to a certain point. So yeah.
Yeah. And CAPS is our counseling and psychological services. So most campuses will have a counseling center, which is really good to know about if you're a student. And if you're not a student, you can often take advantage of their community counseling. So for example, UNLV also has a community-based counseling center. So there's student counselors who are getting their hours done, but you can get a session for like $10 to $15, while normally out in the community, it can be 80 to 100. So good to know about whether you're a student there or not, that there can be things there. Vanessa was mentioning ratemyprofessor.com and being able to see, like, if you have 4 sections of math you can take and you're like, which faculty do I choose? They're all the same time. You can look at ratemyprofessor.com and get a sense of, like, what are students frustrated about? Do they think they're a good teacher? Are they understanding about their students and flexible when it's reasonable? So that's something that can be helpful whatever campus you're at, whether it's community college, UNLV, or elsewhere. And then we wanted to talk a little bit about getting involved. Our students here are involved not only in alternative breaks, but in a range of different things. And so it's really good to build out your resume, to give you some connection to campus and a social circle and support. So there are so many things to get involved in. Almost any campus, whether it's community college or four-year university, will have some sort of involvement fair at the start of a semester, or some sort of involvement office if you missed that, to be able to say, hey, I'm kind of interested in this. How do I find out how to do that? So many of our students work on campus, which can be a great thing because you can, all the places that are on campus are understanding of, like, it's finals week, it's midterms week. And so they tend to be a lot more supportive in different ways than your retail job at like Pier 1, where I worked in college. And they were kind of like, doesn't matter, we're still open, show up for your shift. So consider working on campus. Even though you don't always get paid a lot, you can get connected to other networks. I think, Vanessa, were you saying that you had a supervisor who was like, hey, do you know about this scholarship? And you were able to apply for it. Did I just take your
Yeah. So I was saying that when I was at CSN, I volunteered to work with their Students First department, which was like onboarding students from high school. And in that, telling them like what my aspirations were, one of the faculty was able to point me to a scholarship, which I applied for and ended up getting to help me transfer to UNLV. So I was saying that if working on campus, yes, like Sina said, it adjusts to your schedule a little bit easier. They still expect you to work, but it's a little bit easier to say, hey, I have a class this Friday, and then them be more understanding than, like she said, just working at like Old Navy and them being like, that's not our problem. But also getting to know and networking with other students and faculty helps connect you to scholarship. I cannot stress that enough, to always look for those scholars. So many grants and scholarships, and it's tedious to go through it and see what you qualify for. But I think it's safe to say there's a scholarship for everybody and everyone. So, and if you're overwhelmed, again, go back to those academic advisors and say, hey, or even in high school, I know that they have people set up to help with that as well. So definitely ask, because that can be a huge lifesaver, literally.
Absolutely. Jill, who's one of our site leaders who wasn't here, was also talking about if you're getting involved and you're getting involved in an academic club, so like the psychology club, that can be a really great connection, because usually the advisor for that is a faculty member and they want to help students get involved. And you can get connected to different academic opportunities and interests. So consider that whatever campus you're on, because it can be a good way to get connected as well, in addition to working on campus, if that's a thing you're looking at. We had some questions about tuition and books, and then prepping for college level work. The one thing I want us to talk about is imposter syndrome real quick before we leave some of these things around getting help and support in college. If you've ever played Among Us, you know the imposter is the person who is trying to pretend like they belong and that they're part of the crew, but they're actually running around killing their crewmates. And so imposter syndrome can be very real on college campuses, where you go like, I don't belong here. Everyone else has got their stuff together. They're not struggling. They know where to go for help. And so I just want to name that I think it's very normal to feel that way on a college campus, but the likelihood is that other people feel the same as you. So just know that if you're here and you're not having this perfect experience and you're struggling and you're feeling like you don't belong, it may be imposter syndrome. Which still may have struggles that go with it, but know that you do belong, and that it is something that is very common and that many of us have felt it. So we just kind of want to name that so that you don't go like, this isn't for me, I don't belong here. It's like, you probably do. And it's just a hard process. So, okay. We had a question about book hacks and how to figure out how to get books cheaper or at reduced cost. So do any of you have anything to offer on that as a suggestion?
Yes. Hello. So before you become a student, there's actually this Facebook page that I've been on since, and I know like Facebook might not be something that you all use, at least high schoolers use anymore. I know it's becoming very outdated. I feel very old when I get on it all the time now, but there's groups, and I'm pretty sure you could find them on other platforms as well. I'm personally one on Facebook that's called Textbook Exchange. And there are students there that have used their books for the semester, and then they're selling it for much cheaper in a used version there, or are willing to loan it to you for the semester, and then they just return it back to you when they're done with the course. So that's definitely a resource, is just networking with fellow peers and current students that will have those textbooks that they have bought in the past for those courses. There's also there are some courses where you will need a brand new version, depending. For example, for lab, you need a brand new book that will have material that you have to turn in as well, take it out, fill out the worksheet and turn in. But there are textbooks that you can have used. And the bookstore offers both the specific UNLV versions that some professors may require, or used versions that are much cheaper that you can purchase or rent for the semester, which is also possible through Amazon. I know has a renting option. There's also I think Chegg Textbook is another one that does rent options. And so those are much more affordable than purchasing the book, and allows you to even also write on the textbook if you like to annotate, or prefer, if you're renting it, use sticky notes instead. But that's the general gist for textbooks. If anyone else has anything else to add?
I think you hit them all. The only thing I was going to add to that is that the library does keep textbooks in there as well. And you can, you have to remember there's thousands of students. So there's a chance that the textbook you need, everybody needs, but you can definitely put a reserve on it, or you can try and get a copy and then make your own copies there. And it costs to make copies, but at CSN you get a credit. I don't think at UNLV you get a credit, but you make copies, and it doesn't add up to the same cost as the book. So if it's something that, again, rate my professor, it's not gold, but if you go on there, they'll kind of say like, hey, we use this textbook throughout, or what, the professor had us read it a little bit in the beginning and then went into lectures, or hey, we didn't use a textbook at all, because you usually don't find that information out till you get your syllabus, and you don't get your syllabus till at least a week before, if not the first day. So if you're like me and you're a planner and you're like, hey, I need my stuff before I get to class. Also with that, understand professors are understanding of, hey, you just got the syllabus. They don't expect you to show up day one with books in hand. They do expect you to show up day two with books in hand sometimes. So be aware of that. And it all depends on the professor. So check out the library and make sure that you do your research as far as talking to previous students. And as you go through your major, once you get into that tinier group of people, you start to really make those friends and connections and go, hey, what classes are you taking? What books did you have? And it becomes more of a community, and you end up kind of sharing more, because we're all in the same boat. We're all in the same student boat. So it becomes a little bit more of like a, hey, let's help you, you help me kind of thing. So yeah.
I will add that our student government, which is CSUN, the Consolidated Students of the University of Nevada, they do offer a book scholarship every semester. It's not always a lot of money, and I think it's somewhat competitive, but it's good to know about. And then what Vanessa was talking about is called a reserve copy, which means you can't check it out of the library, but every course at the university, the faculty member has to put in for a reserve copy to be held at the library, and it stays there all the time. So someone could have it checked out in the library, but they won't have it checked out for 2 weeks at a time. So that was a really good piece to mention. Oh, go ahead.
One more thing for like biology and chemistry textbooks. The biology and chemistry material doesn't like change ever. It's like the same thing, and they just like turn it in, or the textbook company will just create a new edition with like the material rearranged. But sometimes the publisher will post an old edition for free online, and you can just use that and like find the material. It won't be like the same chapter numbers, but it's still a lot cheaper than like a $200 textbook.
Good points. Good hacks, everyone. I think the last question that we have is going to be kicked off by Natalie, and folks can jump in around what should you consider doing right now in high school to prepare for college level work?
Before I go on to college level work, however, I'm going to touch on that financial. We talked about scholarships, and there are actually quite a few scholarships that are offered at UNLV that are strictly for CCSD graduates. If I'm not mistaken, there's also one specifically for room and board if you are a CCSD student as well. And there's a variety of programs. I know that here with SLL, there are certain programs that are available to students that offer in regards to certain student needs. For example, we have the Hope Scholars Program, which Tina could also speak further about and provide more details on.
I was muted. Yeah, so the Hope Scholars works with CCSD and a couple of community agencies, and that is for Title I youth who are former foster students. So if you qualify as part of that, this is a really valuable program, or if you know someone who qualifies for it, it covers room and board and tuition and has a lot of support for those students who may not have it in other arenas and chapters. So in addition to that specific program, we have support, some like emergency financial aid. We can connect folks to the pantry, the food pantry we have on campus. We have a Take What You Need program. So when you're mentioning these programs, Natalie, it's like sometimes you don't necessarily need like the scholarship. That's a huge help. But sometimes you need more like, oh God, I paid my tuition and now I don't have enough for food or for this other, like my car broke down and how am I supposed to get to school if I don't have it? So thanks for giving me the chance to mention some of those resources too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think attending or watching student panels such as this, I'm sure there's also other panels and at least with new student orientation specifically, attending those events and really interacting with students that are already students there about what life is like. That's an important aspect no matter where if you decide to go into higher education. whether you come to UNLV or another institution, it's super important to interact with students that are there, living the experience that you'll be in their shoes, not in the near future. So understanding what their experience is like, what clubs they're engaged with. At UNLV, there's a club for everything. There's a Disney club. I'm positive there was a club called they watch Steve Buscemi movies and eat pizza. Like there's a club for everything. So definitely interacting with students that are already there and learning more about what life is like.
I would say for things to do in high school, to prepare for college level work in regards to like the homework and the things like that nature. Personally, and that's just my experience, I did go to private school, and I took some AP classes, but I feel like the high school level work was actually harder than college level work. So I would say use that time to really figure out your own system and your own way of like keeping yourself on top of tasks. I don't know because I've been out of high school for a while, but I know when I was in high school, we took at least like 6 to 8 classes at a time. And that is in college, the most I think you're allowed to take, and Stina, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you can only take up to 18 credits, which comes out to 5 or 6 courses. Is that correct? Yeah, which is still a lot, but I'm just saying. So I would take the time to really figure out your own system, and whether that's, hey, you know what, I need to like an hour a day to just focus on my homework or whatever. There's not as much homework necessarily, I think, in college as there is in high school. There is more stuff that you're just responsible for. No one's going to hold your hand in that regards. Teachers aren't going to say, hey, don't forget you have a test tomorrow. Hey, don't forget you have a paper due tomorrow. Yes, they'll give you reminders. It's not like you're completely on your own, but for the most part, it's like, here's your syllabus, read your syllabus, read your syllabus. And then that's it. You're an adult. So they're like, hey, here's your big due dates, be present. The other thing I would say is if you have an opportunity to work in a group project in high school, really, really try and like figure out how to manage that, because there's so many group projects that happen in college and it is a lot harder, especially now with the pandemic. You're all virtual, you're all over the place. And that I think is the hardest thing for a lot of college students, is to work in that group dynamic. So anytime you have a chance to do anything in a group environment in high school, I would get those nerves out there. And then that way, when you're in those college, you can focus more on the material in college and less of like the, oh my gosh, I'm talking with 4 people I don't know aspect. So those would be my big practice while you can. And get involved in clubs at high school level, because most of them translate to college level. So you can kind of get your feet wet and go, hey, I did theater in high school. It wasn't really my jam. I did band. That was cool. So now you can like weed out the things in college that you don't want to, to spend extra time doing.
There was one question that came across the chat, and that was, who should you contact if you need to access a resource but don't know where to go? And they asked, was that your academic advisor? I would say that the academic advisors are very knowledgeable about where to go on campus or how to navigate the UNLV website. You can also search the UNLV website or any college website. Most advisors are pretty savvy on what's going on where, even if it's not academic related. So please do feel free to ask an advisor, consult the website, an involvement office on campus, wherever campus you are, whether it's community college or UNLV. We'll also typically have people who are pretty savvy on where to go for financial aid questions or health questions or whatever. They may not exactly know, but they know how to find the answer. So find the website, find an office, and find either your advisor or someone else. Is there anything else anyone wanted to add, or even Mr. Wilson, or I think Anne might be here?
I was wondering, could you tell us again, what were some of the resources, or where do students go for the first generation college students? Where can they find those? Because you mentioned some resources for them.
I would say the 2 main resources, and any of our awesome students can jump in and correct me or add to it if there's something I miss. The Intersection is an academic office, but they have some direct connections to first generation student support. I believe one of their staff members is the faculty advisor for the First Generation Club. I think they call it the First Gen Club. So that's one. And then the other one is the TRIO office, which I believe is, oh my gosh, I just blanked on it. It's like they have academic, it's,
I've heard of TRIO.
yeah. We have an office and I'm blanking because we work closely with their staff, but I'm just having one of those moments. But we have a lot with TRIO SSS. And so they have specified resources for first gen students that other students can access.
So that's an office they can find on campus as well?
They are on campus. They also have one off campus. I always say like check the website first because that's a great place to contact someone. And you could reach out to them now virtually and get connected.
Awesome. Thank you.
The other little hack I'll throw in, because let's just be cognizant of the times. A lot of these departments and organizations have their own Instagrams, and they are on social media. So that might be it might be easier for this generation to just look things up that way. They do post a lot of stuff on there as far as like, hey, we're having our first meeting, or hey, like we're having this involvement thing going, especially now if everything's virtual. There's a lot of live stuff. There's a lot of like links and stuff. So if just give it a good Instagram search and maybe you might land somewhere. But in addition to what Stina has said.
I follow a lot of them for that very reason when I'm like, let me see if I can find this answer.
And sorry, Stina, I was going to pop on. The office is called, it's the Center on campus for the TRIO resources. KO, yeah, the Center for Academic Enrichment and Outreach. And I actually dropped the link in the chat there. So that was something that I wasn't aware of. I was involved in TRIO in high school, and that was definitely a resource that helped the transition over.
They're the ones that host the Bridge program and SSS, Student Support Services. So yeah, thank you, Natalie. It was out of my head. I was like, the center? Well,
awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. It's been a pleasure, and know that, just our experiences that we have are not representative of everything, but we have some great students who really care about their peers, also finding their niche. So hopefully this was some helpful info.
Yes, very useful information, and I apologize I didn't have more students attend this live, but I will definitely be sharing this with my classes when I see them tomorrow and Friday. So, I'm glad I got a few, but I was trying my best to get more. But just know you didn't waste your time. We recorded this video, so I'll be sharing all this information, and I really appreciate all of you for taking the time to speak to my students.
And this is Anne. I appreciate certainly all of you. Stina, thank you for setting this up for us. We are going to make this available to any of our specialists, and we have 60 programs. So we are going to be offering this recording, and I know that it will be so helpful. I wish I had had something like this, when I was preparing for college. So thank you.
Absolutely. And thanks for having us, because we don't always get the platform, and we're kind of making lemonade out of lemons when we're all virtual and doing things remotely. So it's been a pleasure. We are supportive of the work y'all do.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. And nice to meet you all. Nice to meet you, Stina. And thank you, UNLV students. And good luck on the rest of your college journeys.
Thanks. And UNLV, we'll see you back on Zoom.
Yep.
All right. Bye. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Thanks, Ann.
Thank you.